start with telling us about like your family and your child? I actually might start yours with kind of a warning for people.
Yeah, mine
So,
is definitely a little bit different than a lot of
yeah.
the families that come on here.
So, well, do you know though, I don't think you're definitely not the only person that's ever had it
Oh,
happen.
no,
And so
absolutely
I
not.
think your story is super important, but I do want to give everybody a warning that there might be some things that are triggering or traumatic,
Yeah, absolutely.
as far as like all of our stuff is traumatic, but this story is a little bit more traumatic as far as what you've had to go through and
Yeah.
different things. So that's our warning. We're just going to give a
Yeah.
disclaimer in case you're feeling super sensitive today. This, maybe watch this one a different day, or but
Yeah. If
it's really
anything
necessary.
to do with child abuse kind of
Yeah,
gets you, then it might not be something you really want to watch if you're not in the right mental state to hear it.
right. But I do think that you're definitely not alone.
Oh
Um,
no, there's still, I mean, statistically, there's still 1,400 cases of this documented yearly.
Wow,
So,
I believe it. So, okay, so with that, with that
yeah.
disclaimer out of the way, I think let's talk about just your family. Let's just
Yeah.
talk
So
about
we,
how and everything.
um, my ex and I had kids really quick. I think we were only together for like 6 months before we got pregnant with our oldest daughter. She turns two in December. And then we have the twin boys, Andy and Davis, who I found out I was pregnant with 5.5 months after having our daughter. So, yeah, so there's
Okay,
13 months in age
let's stop
between
there for
them.
1 second because I want everybody to like hear your when you told me this before. I was not laughing, but I was laughing with you, not
Yeah,
like you.
it's
But
a lot.
okay, so you were how old was your daughter, and like what are the circumstances of
He
finding out
was
twins?
5.5 months old.
Okay.
And I did not know that I was pregnant. I was going in for my 6 month checkup after having her.
Right.
Obviously, did the urine sample and everything that you do when you go to your OB. And she came walking into the room and said, "Hey, did you know that you're pregnant?" And I said, "No,
Like, take
because
it
I'm
back.
not supposed to be." And then about a week later, we had the follow up ultrasound because I was too early to have the ultrasound done at the 6 month appointment.
Sure.
And she said, well, not only are you pregnant, you are having twins. And I said, "You're lying." No.
Where's your scalpel?
You're lying to me. That this is a cruel joke.
Oh my God.
Um, they are identical. They were mono-di twins. So that means they had two amniotic sacs and one placenta.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of the reason why they're identical twins is because they were sharing the same DNA supply.
Sure. So, mine were die. So I had like two full things.
Yeah.
I had two placentas, two. So like I had the best one available, and you were like the second best, right? Because it's good to
Yeah,
have two
we were still
facts.
technically high risk
Yeah,
because of sharing the same placenta and the danger of twin to twin transfusion syndrome. Um, but other than that, like they were a pretty standard pregnancy. I was the one that was sick. They
right.
were fine. I had preeclampsia and gestational diabetes.
That's right. You were talking about the preeclampsia. So we've talked with a few women with preeclampsia, and
Hmm.
I have now learned in two different women that it doesn't go away right after you deliver. You have
No.
to stay with it for, and this is like now I'm hitting it on every time. I'm like, I had no idea. I
Yeah.
literally thought you just like had the babies
It
and you felt better. So did you have what were your symptoms?
so my symptoms didn't start until I was like 29, 30 weeks pregnant, and then I went into preterm labor at 31 weeks.
Okay.
So I didn't really get like diagnosed until I was already in the hospital. But I was just really swollen. I mean, like I was the day that I went into preterm labor, I was so swollen I couldn't get socks on.
Oh,
She didn't have cankle, she had elephant legs.
I mean, I was literally like when you think of like people that have edema,
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that really, really, really swollen calves and
yeah.
feet. That's what it looked like.
Oh my gosh.
And so yeah, I mean, after my this is a little TMI, but after my C-section, they had to track how much I was peeing because of how bad my preeclampsia was, and it was
Sure.
like 700 or 800 mLs of fluid every time I was going to the bathroom, and that was like 2 or 3 hours in between. Like I lost somewhere between within the first 24 hours, somewhere between like 24 and 2600 mLs of fluid from
Wow. Did
preeclampsia.
you feel better?
Oh yeah, no, I was like, oh my God, I think I just lost 30 pounds of water weight.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
just crazy. Like,
Yeah,
okay.
it was crazy. But the high blood pressure and the swelling were the two things that were the worst with the
You
preeclampsia.
didn't have any headaches.
No, I didn't have any
Oh, that's
headaches.
nice.
I felt really swollen and my skin was like really tight. And I was always out of breath. But that's kind of normal when you're carrying 9 pounds of baby inside of
Yeah.
you
I
to
mean,
be out
that's
of
the
breath.
thing, right? It's so that, and I think that twins pregnancies are probably one of the hardest for stuff like that because you're
Yeah.
already like, well, of course I'm swollen. Well, of course I'm ginormous. My blood
Yeah.
supply is like 10 times what it normally
Well,
is.
and so at 20 weeks pregnant with the twins during my gender reveal, I was the same size that I was full term with my daughter.
Yep. Me too. Same thing. I was the
So
same. I was
I
like that.
was a house by
Yeah.
the time that I went in to have the boys. Like I was huge.
Well, I imagine because then you had the water retention on top of it. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I carried mine 39 and a half weeks. So I was like, I'm just going to give you this little anecdote because you will appreciate it. We went to a restaurant like 4 nights before I had the twins. And the waiter asked my daughter, "Are you having a brother or sister?" And she said, "I'm having both." And he said, "Oh, thank goodness." Like
Yeah.
he was so worried that I was so huge. It
I
was,
literally was laying in the hospital bed and I was just like, every part of my body feels massive.
yeah,
I feel massive.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. So how far did so you were in the hospital? Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. She was just talking to me about Davis.
So
Um,
you were in the hospital from when to when? And then,
I went in January 3rd. I had the boys January 12th,
okay.
and then I was discharged January 14th.
Oh, good boy.
Okay. So did you
So
have them? So they were 32, you said 32 weeks?
32 weeks and 5 days.
Okay. And
So there
then,
was seven weeks early.
okay. And
Yeah.
how did all of that go? How was all of it?
So it was okay. I mean, they unfortunately stuck me in a room from the time that I was admitted to having the boys. They stuck me in a room with no windows, and I had the flu, so I couldn't leave my room. So I was going a little bit stir crazy. But other than that, like Las Vegas hospitals are well known for being really, really good. And I was also at a children's hospital. So like I was being taken care of phenomenally. So the hospital stay wasn't bad at all. I was just again stuck in a room with no windows for 9 days.
That's a, that's hard. That's a hard
Yeah.
thing.
But I was really sick. So like it sucked, but I was also really out of it for a lot of that time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I had forgotten that you had the flu, but you just said that, and I'm like,
yeah,
top of everything, you had the
yeah,
flu. Okay, so
yeah. For a week out of the 9 days, I was pretty sick.
yeah.
So by the time that they told me that I had to go in for an emergency C-section because they couldn't lower my blood pressure, I was like, take them out of me. I'm done.
Sure.
I'm done. Take them out of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was, I mean, the hospital stay wasn't bad. The boys were in the NICU. Davis was in the NICU for 23 days, and his twin brother Andy was in the NICU for 33 days.
Okay.
And then they were released. He was released 10 days before obviously, and we spent 10 days in Vegas waiting for Andy to be released. He was released on Valentine's Day. So here's my little Valentine's Day gift.
Oh, that's sweet. So how far were you from the hospital?
2.5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we
what
were
did you
in
do? Did you
Arizona.
stay there at the
We stayed, so when we came back originally to Arizona, and we were kind of driving back and forth from Arizona to Vegas, and like seeing them for a couple of hours and then coming home. But my parents ended up leaving, because of the kid's father being a tyrant. They ended up leaving, and we got a room at the Ronald McDonald House. So
Okay.
we were able to stay in Las Vegas at the Ronald McDonald House for almost 2 weeks,
Okay.
waiting for the boys to be released from the NICU.
So how did the social workers at the hospital help you at the Ronald McDonald House?
Yes.
Okay.
The social worker for the NICU was really helpful.
Okay.
And it took a couple of weeks. Well, we started the process when I was still pregnant with the boys.
Okay.
And then it took probably about almost a month before they had a space available. But they cater to all of the hospitals in the area. And it's also like kids with cancer, kids in the PICU, parents with babies in the NICU. Like they're all of the things associated with a children's hospital, they cater to the families for. And they only have, I think it's like 20 rooms. So
Sure.
they're limited in who they can help and what they can help with.
Sure.
But they're amazing. You get 3 meals a day. They have a fully stocked pantry. They're super accommodating.
That's so amazing. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing for people to know. Like if you know that something's going to be happening, it's good to get that started.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you, they have, at least at Sunrise Children's Hospital is where the boys were at. I don't know about any other hospital, but at least at Sunrise, they have a Ronald McDonald room that's open during the weekdays. And they have like snacks, quiet time. If you have another child, like having our daughter, she wasn't allowed in the NICU when we would come up to see the boys. She was too young. So she would go into the Ronald McDonald room and hang out with the volunteers that are there so that we could go into the NICU and spend time with the boys, and she would be taken care of. And they also have bed space in there as well if you can't leave the hospital for whatever reason and your baby is there, they have bed space in that room so that you can still have a place to stay.
Oh, that's really cool. I think that's important because I think sometimes we don't know to ask, like what's available.
There are a lot of resources. You just have to know what
And
resources
I think most
to
hospitals
ask about.
do have it.
Yeah.
Like our children's hospital here, not primary, but our children's hospital here, they have a room like that. It's not the Ronald McDonald, but it is a room for siblings if they need to.
Yeah.
So I really think that that's a good thing for people to know. Okay. So moving on, you got to bring them home about a month later.
Mm-hmm.
Got home.
Yeah. So I was on FMLA with work. So I got a full 12 weeks off of work. I went back to work, let's see, March 29th, right before the beginning of April, which means I was at work for just about a month, a little over a month before all of this happened. I spent literally every waking moment taking care of 3 children before I went back to work. But we came home, Arlie, and she was 13 months old, so she really could care less that there were 2 more babies home as long as she was getting her attention that she wanted.
Yeah.
But they were good. They were good kids. Taking care of twins is hard, but
that's a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, when 2 babies are absolutely screaming their heads off because they're both hungry at the same time, and you only have 2 arms and 2 hands, you learn to figure some things out pretty quickly on how to feed them both at the same time.
Yeah.
And they were formula fed, bottle fed. Because I was so sick coming out of my C-section. I was on pain medication, so I was pumping and dumping, and after a while it just went away. There was nothing that I could do to restart it. So yeah, making bottles at like, 2-3 o'clock in the morning. They were eating every 2 hours coming out of the NICU.
Yeah.
And they were on schedule.
Oh, those NICU babies. Yeah, they're on a schedule, like they run a tight ship, NICU babies.
2 hours, and their eyes were open and ready to eat. But they were typical newborns. That was to be expected. Not colicky, didn't have any medical issues coming out of the NICU whatsoever.
Healthy, happy babies.
Yeah, all healthy, happy babies. So, yeah, he's sitting right here staring at the light.
Oh, cute. Okay, so you're working now, and this is where this story kind of turns.
Yeah, so I was working a pretty early morning shift. I was working from 5 a.m. to 1 in the afternoon. So I was, getting up around 4:30, getting ready for work and leaving. And their biological father was taking care of them while I was at work. From the get-go, there's a lot of red flags and kind of controversy as to like, well, why did you let the kids around him alone if he was acting this way or that way? But I don't think anybody ever predicts that someone, like, you would think like, oh, a caregiver or a distant family member or a friend maybe would lose their cool and harm your child. You don't ever really think that, like, if I can't trust my kids around their father, who am I supposed to trust them around? So there weren't any necessarily like red flags surrounding the kids and their safety. But he did have a lot of anger issues towards other adults. So he had a short fuse surrounding majority of everybody around him. So he was a hothead. But again, they're his kids, and he was phenomenal with our daughter. He was great with our daughter.
Yeah, you have experience with your father. They're being good with your other daughter. So, I don't think it's probably good to look back and try to rewrite history.
You don't
have any reason.
I'm definitely I did that for a while. I mean, we're only coming up on 7 months into this whole issue, and I did in the very beginning a lot of the what if. Yeah. What if I did this different? What if I had stayed home that day? What if I had figured it out early? Were there any signs that I just had blinders on to? And there really wasn't. He lied and manipulated his own life story to make him seem to be something that he wasn't. Yeah. But yeah, I went back to work and everything was pretty much okay. He was obviously stressed out, taking care of 3 young kids. Sure. And I had given him opportunities, like, we can try and put Arlie in daycare for a couple of days out of the week to give you a break from, her being a toddler now and needing a little bit more attention, as well as the boys being newborns. Or one of our friends can come over and help you for a couple of hours during the day. So there was always help offered. He never took it, never wanted it. I don't know if that was maybe just like I'm supposed to be able to do this, so I'm not going to offer that kind of help I'm not going to accept that kind of help because I, as a parent, should be able to take care of my children kind of mentality. But on May 3rd, early morning of May 3rd, I woke up at around 4:15, 4:30, got up, got ready for work, and went to work. Got a string of pretty terrible text messages pertaining to the boys. And then at about 6:45, I got a phone call that Davis had stopped breathing and they had called 911. He was resuscitated after about 3 minutes of not having any oxygen to his brain and was immediately taken to our local hospital that is not a trauma bay, that does not have a NICU or a PICU or anything of the sort. And they did a CT scan and found out that he had 2 bilateral hematomas on either side of his head. They at the time wanted to say that it was shaken baby syndrome, but they did not have the level of testing that they needed to be able to properly diagnose him. So at that point, it was either it is shaken baby syndrome or this is something medical that is now showing face.
Sure.
Because he was a preemie.
Sure. Yeah.
So they life vacced him to Las Vegas where he was born. And about 8 hours later, that's when he was properly diagnosed with shaken baby syndrome. He was
The next day they actually did eye exam.
Yeah, they did an eye exam on him the next day, and that's where they found the retinal hemorrhaging. And that is one of the few tests that can exclusively determine whether a baby was shaken or not.
I was there too.
He was intubated and sedated for the first week that he was there, the first full 7 days that he was at the Sunrise PICU. He was asleep. He was having seizures every 1 to 5 minutes, and they were lasting for upwards of a minute each. And they were closing his airway. So that's why he had to be intubated. And he was sedated because of all the seizure activity that he was having. They decided sedation would be the best way to go about it until they could put him on a medication to either stop or decrease them. Luckily, they found a combination of medications that were able to stop the seizures from happening. And then after that, it was a really long road.
Yeah.
He was in the hospital for 7.5 weeks, where he had G-tube surgery, and he has a shunt in his head, and he's got brain damage. We aren't entirely sure what his deficits are going to look like.
Sure.
But he was only 16 weeks old, 9 weeks adjusted when he was shaken. So everybody has a really positive outlook on what therapy will enable him to be able to do later on in life and give him some sort of independence and quality of life.
He just has to learn differently.
Yeah, it might take him a little bit longer to learn things, but his doctors and his specialists are pretty positive that he's going to be able to do all or most of the things that his siblings can do as well.
Just at different paces.
Yeah, he's doing pretty good. The last time I saw him, he's like, doing a lot of the things right already.
He's for a 10-month-old, he's rolling over on his stomach and back onto his back. He's lifting his head up. He's doing a lot of stuff that you would expect someone earlier in infancy to be doing, but that's a lot considering when we got him home, he couldn't hold his head up at all.
Yeah.
And he had no grasp. He had no grip in his hands or anything. So he's come a long way.
He was like having a newborn.
Yeah, he's come a long way.
So, I don't want you to have to share anything you don't want to, but I kind of want to, if you, whatever you would like to share about your thought process during that time, and because you're dealing with a lot of personal stuff also between
Um,
you and your, partner.
yeah,
So, what do you
I
share with that, and then we can kind of leave it there and then move.
I kind of like blacked out a lot of the first few days after everything happened. Um, he was immediately kicked out of the house. So we had immediately everybody within the immediate family was investigated by DCFS. I had an open investigation against me. I couldn't be alone with the kids. My parents and my brother had temporary guardianship of all three kids. I Within the first couple of days, I had an order of protection granted. There was a restraining order put against him for the kids and I at his arraignment. Um, and it was just a lot of like, I will do whatever I have to do to keep my children in my home with me. So whatever it is that I have to do, just tell me, I'll do it. Um, and there, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth in my own mind of like, everybody's saying he did it. I know he did it, but do I know that he did it?
Sure. Yeah,
Like,
of course. You had another child with him and didn't have
yeah,
any of that happen. So, yeah.
there was like a huge time frame where I felt almost guilty that that I was so angry at him for doing what he did. And I had to go into some pretty deep therapy and go on medication to really like regulate my emotions that were happening. There was a partial denial, partial anger, and then just like a lot of sadness.
Yeah.
It changed the trajectory of everybody's life, not just Davis's, like his siblings, myself, all of our immediate family. Our lives changed in one action. Um, and I mean, you in situations like this, even though you're extremely angry at the person because they're your partner and you thought that your life was going to be something completely different from what it turns out, you have to let yourself mourn what you thought your life was going to be like. And that was really hard because I spent a lot of time turning a blind eye to our issues and ended up kind of blaming myself for a lot of the things that ended up happening. Um, Even though I wasn't there, I was at work and I had no idea what was going on. And, you know, so there was a lot of blame, a lot of guilt, and a lot of just like sadness all together. And I would have ended up having a mental breakdown if I didn't get help alongside of trying to be there for my children.
Right.
You know?
How did you find the people to help you?
Um, I was very lucky that the situation, as bad as it was, I was very lucky that I was at work when this happened. Because in a majority of these cases, I know one woman who she literally just went to the corner store and came back and her baby wasn't breathing. In a lot of situations, a lot of women either don't get resources that they need for help because DCFS or whoever is investigating the situation can't rule out that they didn't know.
Yeah.
So they tend to not want to help,
Sure.
even though usually the mother is also a victim themselves. And the other flip of that coin is they don't have anyone else to depend on. and they don't understand what their rights to help are. So they usually end up going back to their abuser.
Right.
I was very lucky in my situation that I was at work. It was documented. I was on cameras, going to work at the time that I said I was, and getting the information that I got when I did. So DCFS closed my case very quickly and was then able to help me get into therapy. They helped me get Davis into therapy. They gave me all the paperwork that I needed to be able to get sole custody and be able to get into the victim's witness advocacy, so that I had someone that was going to court with me, someone that was talking me through what all of the legal jargon side of everything actually meant, and someone that I can call if I get any information about their biological father if I felt unprotected.
Yeah.
So my case is very different in that aspect, and I also have a huge support system outside of that with my family.
Yeah.
My mom was the first person that I called, and they were in Oregon at the time and came flying down to Arizona, essentially. I think they got to Arizona.
Got to Vegas at 11.
Yeah, they got to Vegas the same day that I called them.
Good mom. That's who we're hearing off camera.
Yeah.
And Dad, because Dad drove.
Yeah, Dad drove, but Mom was like, get up, we gotta go
Good
now.
Yeah.
So I'm very
And
lucky.
you have lots of siblings, right?
I have 3 half siblings and a stepsister. Well,
Okay.
actually, five half siblings and a stepsister, but 2 of them are on my biological dad's side of the family.
Okay.
So yeah, I have a lot of siblings and a lot of support and a lot of people that rallied behind me to support me when this all happened. I mean, I have family that I hadn't even met or talked to until this situation happened that were trying to help me and support me. So
That's
yeah, it was
so good to hear. Like,
yeah, it was a
sorry.
definite bonding moment over a very heinous situation.
And
You were
so,
luckier than most of them.
yeah. And all of that is just, you just have to be, grateful for what you can be grateful for.
Yes, absolutely.
And I
Yeah,
think
there's
that's definitely, every time I've talked to you, I felt that same thing, like that you're grateful for the things that you can be.
yeah, it's definitely like you can't dwell on the bad things. You kind of just have to let those roll off your back and go, well, what do we do to fix the situation or change the situation? Who do I have to talk to get the support that we need at this time, rather than being like, well, I don't know what my next steps are, so I'm just gonna wallow in self-pity or feel defeated, because it's really easy to do that, but that's not going to get you anywhere. That's not going to get anybody the help that they need, and that's not really being a model for what this situation is like and what this unfortunately being a part of the statistic is like.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about every mom I talk to, and in particular you. I am so amazed at their unwillingness to be a victim of the circumstance.
Yeah, no, that's what he wants.
Yeah, because you have to decide not to be a victim, because you have every reason to be a victim, and you more than even some of the rest of us, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have every reason to decide you were a victim. That's true, but it doesn't. Victimizing yourself is really what happens when you decide to be one, right? And so I'm really impressed with that. Okay, so let me know if we need to cut this out, but he's incarcerated and was incarcerated.
Yes, so he's currently in the county jail in Arizona. His trial starts early next year.
Okay.
So
how
hopefully,
long
fingers crossed, because
Sure. How long was he incarcerated for? Or when, what
He
time, how
he
soon?
was arrested 4 days after everything happened. So they did their investigation, ruled everybody out, and then they arrested him. Um, he tried to run. He tried to leave and leave the, I guess technically the country. He tried to run to Mexico. Um, and even now, even though he is not talking and he will not tell anybody what he did or why he did it or in what manner he did it, um, he still says and believes that he is going to get out. He's going to bond out and he's going to run away. He's going to run from this charge. He has 3 felony child abuse charges against him. Yeah. So he is still delusional. And his trial is supposed to last 3 days. It's a jury trial.
Okay.
And he's facing 17 years minimum, 48 years max. So
What do you think about, like, do you think that you'll go, or are you going to be a witness? Like, you can tell, you can choose
I
not
have
to
to
do
go.
anything. Okay.
I have to, yeah, I have to go. I have to be technically I have to stand in for the victim because Davis obviously is 10 months old and he can't verbalize what happened.
Or what
So
happens to him.
yeah, or what is happening to him now as an after effect of being shaken. So I have to go as a witness. Um, I'm still a little bit of like not really sure how I'm going to react or how to feel. Because every court date that he's had since being arrested has been through Zoom. So I haven't had to be in the same room as him. Even when I was in the courtroom, he was on Zoom. So there's been no actual interaction with him. He hasn't even been able to see me more than twice. So
That's a lot.
yeah, it's definitely like a nerve-wracking feeling to sit in the room with the person that did this again, and then have to also basically plead my case as to why he should be incarcerated.
Right. And so you've recently moved. So do you have a support system there that's going to help you get through this? I know your parents are there, so that's good.
Yeah.
And do you have outside your family? Do you have some people set up for that to help?
Yeah, so we're very lucky that a lot of the programs that Davis was in Arizona are government ran programs, so they transfer from state to state. Not a lot of people really know about a program called Healthy Families.
Okay.
And it's basically the name can be different throughout different states, but Healthy Families is basically a an advocate for you for parents and children alike that will come in. They come in once a week, and they offer you resources, but they also offer like free diapers for needy families, free wipes for needy families, clothes. They are, since they're a part of a government ran program, they have a lot of other resources that they can then refer your family to. And they just kind of come in and socialize and interact with you and with your kids. Our advocate, she brought homemade Play-Doh for Arlie last week, and yeah, just stuff like that, like activities. They walk you through like milestones that your children should be hitting or what to expect from those, and give you some pointers as to how to deal with those milestones.
Yeah.
And they're kind of just there to help. They're just
Right.
helpful people that come in,
Sweet
and
people.
extremely sweet people that come in and kind of give you a little bit of a parenting class, especially during like hard times
Sure.
or as first time parents or needier families. So yeah, they're it's really cool.
Okay,
And then
so
he's
that
in
one's
the,
Healthy Families. So, if anybody's looking for resources, look for
yeah,
something that has things like that. I love that. I think that's so important. And I mean, you're always one of my favorites to talk to. So I just love you have
yeah,
such a good, like I have found so many good people and good resources. It makes me so happy.
yeah, we were incredibly lucky to have people that are willing to help outside of the family,
Yeah,
outside of, you know, daycares and things like that. People that want to help, that have a true drive to help other families. We're thankful to have those kinds of resources because we then in turn go back and help other needy families through these programs with donations and other things like we are just talking about donating like makeup and skincare and other products like that to this same program for like first time moms or moms that are struggling and that can't afford not even like luxurious products, but like basic human care needs
right.
to try and help other people and do things for other people within the program that have been done for us as well.
Do you know, I can't remember the quote or who it's from or anything, so I'm totally citing it just off the top of my head, but I remember somebody saying, when disasters strike, look for the angels.
Yeah.
And I think that is the whole time I'm listening to you, I always think that, like, look for the angels, and you've just named a bunch of them in different
Yeah.
services, and what a blessing. I mean, I'm imagining your sweet parents driving like crazy. I can
Oh
imagine me
gosh.
if my kid was in this situation, I would be driving like a lunatic. So
Oh gosh.
I am
Yeah.
and then all of these sweet
My
people.
husband did.
I bet he did. I bet he did.
Driving a maniac getting here.
Your mom is sweet. Okay, so as far as feeding has gone, what is the prognosis for Davis with his feeding?
So he is 100% G-tube fed right now. He can still suck, swallow, and breathe on his own.
Okay.
He lost his coordination to do all of those in succession. So he can't swallow and breathe at the same time. He will aspirate.
Okay.
Coming up here soon, we're planning on getting him a swallow study done, which from what I have heard from other people can be somewhat traumatic and stressful.
They're the very first. My last feeding, well, we just got kicked out of feeding therapy. So
Oh,
I'm
no.
not really the right person, but yeah, she's like, well, that's a whole story in itself. But basically, I got broken up with. I didn't even know we were being broken up with till the very end. And she's like, "Hey, we won't see you again." I was like, "Oh, I didn't get it," but whatever. But she had told me if we ever were going to do a swallow study, which now apparently we're not, to bring your therapist.
Yeah.
That if they'll come, that's a really good sign. So anyway, that's my 2 cents is try to see if they'll come with you, because I did 2 swallow studies by myself and I didn't know what was going on and it was crazy.
Yeah.
I'm the therapist.
Yeah. Yeah. Mom's the therapist.
Oh,
No,
you're the
but
yeah, I needed somebody. I was by myself and I didn't know what we were doing, and it was super traumatic for me and Millie and everybody involved. So yeah, your therapist if you can, and your mom.
But he is actively in speech therapy to try and regain a little bit of strength in his throat and in his trunk, because according to his therapist, your trunk strengthening your trunk also strengthens your swallow, and that can be extremely helpful in getting him to a point where he can eat by mouth again. The G-tube was always considered temporary. Even his surgeons, even his GI and his surgeons were also on the same kind of page that the G-tube won't be forever. It's only temporary to keep his quality of life what it is now so that in turn he can get better with swallowing and breathing. And he sucks on a binky like crazy.
And
Like,
he
I
takes
know, I've
some
seen him.
medications.
yeah,
I've seen
he
him do
sucks
it.
on a
He's great,
binky like
yeah.
crazy.
I know,
That is his.
it's so amazing because we've never gotten a binky. So I was like,
Yeah. Well, when he first came out of the hospital after his injury, um, he couldn't hold a binky in his mouth. He couldn't suckle on a binky or hold a binky in his mouth at all. It was my mom and I at every instance, especially when he was eating. When he was eating, that is when we focused on the pacifier even more to incite that suckle reflex back again and give him like the feeling that he was eating by mouth and associating feeding with suckling
yeah.
and trying to keep him kind of within the same thing.
You're like my hero with that. That's so cool. You've done such a
It
good
took
job. You have done such a good job.
consistently doing it consistently every feed. It took
Right, a week.
probably a little bit longer than that. Now he's really good at it, but I would give him probably about a month of like consistently, if the binky fell out, putting it back in his mouth while he was feeding, before he really got the hang of it and even outside of feeding wanted the binky and kept it in his mouth.
Now he's just rolling around and trying to find it again because he keeps dropping it.
Yeah, that is the one thing. He rolls onto his stomach and he loses the binky because he can't do both at the same time yet, and that really frustrates him.
Or that he probably still wants it,
Right.
right? Because he likes it now.
Yeah, he
That's-
still wants it. He likes it, and yeah, he
I'm
wants to
totally
do both at the same
I
time.
remember it because I was like watching him in the background. I was like, man, oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
job.
he's come a really long way. He couldn't, yeah, like I said before, he couldn't even hold his head up coming out of the NICU or the PICU, sorry, on his own.
And he was pre,
Excellent now.
I think he was holding his head up and
Yeah, yeah.
he was, you said 16 weeks old, so he was like
Yeah.
three
He was
and a half.
almost 4 months old, but he was 9 weeks adjusted when it happened.
So he was rolling and doing things.
Yeah, he was trying to roll over onto his stomach already.
Right.
And he was holding his head up during tummy time. So he's kind of still, not so much now, but when we brought him back from the hospital, he was still very much acting like a newborn. Like it kind of like shot him straight back into the newborn phase, and that's kind of where he was stagnant for a long while, for several months. And now he's kind of starting to progress into like physically and mentally, kind of like 4, 5, 6 month old realm.
Which
So
is-
definitely not 10 months, but it is getting better.
Yeah, he's moving forward.
Yeah.
I liked what you said that it was better that he was younger because he has, like,
Yeah.
so I think that's, silver linings everywhere, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I keep saying statistically, but statistically, most shaken baby cases happen between 1 and 2 years old.
Right.
So their skulls are already fused. Their brains are already starting to get ridges and neural pathways, and they've learned a lot of things within, between the age of 18 months and 2 years old, kids are supposed to be learning like 100 to 150 words.
Yeah.
So they're little sponges. They're learning and taking everything in. So when a toddler has a traumatic brain injury, their brain doesn't have anything to push out against. Their brain just swells, and that's where the brain damage happens, is it swells and it pushes against the skull and it has nowhere to go. His brain, it swelled, but he still had plates as his skull. So it just expanded, and it did damage his brain, but nothing as significant as what it would have if he was older.
Oh, well, I always love talking to you. Look at, we're actually like there. We're almost to the end, but tell me, like, if you were to go back and tell yourself something, like if you could visit yourself for one night when it first happened, what would you do? You have like advice that you would tell yourself? And then just for anyone out there, you know, what things do you just want to say? What things do you need to say?
Um, I don't know if there weren't really any signs to like warn my past self of
Oh, I don't,
anything
yeah,
happening.
I don't mean that. I mean like after
But
it happened to like for you to comfort yourself.
it's not your fault. You can't force someone to love you or their children. And that's the sad part, is they are his biological children, and you cannot force someone to care about your children the same way that you do. And also, there's a controversial part. It takes a lot of mental instability to hurt a child. It goes beyond just being malicious or mean or having ill intent. You mentally are sick to be able to do something like this to a baby, let alone anybody else. So advocating for mental health of your partner and yourself, especially as new parents, is a huge thing. I had postpartum depression with Arlie, and medication helped. And there's no reason to be embarrassed, man or woman, to ask for help if you're struggling. And that's the biggest takeaway, is if you are having ideations of hurting your child, if you are feeling like you are going to hurt yourself or your child in any manner, ask for help.
Right away.
You're not going to get in trouble for asking for help. You're going to get in trouble for doing something. You're not going to get your children taken away from for asking for help. And I think that's a huge stigma, is like, well, if I ask for help, people are going to look at me different because I thought about hurting my child. A lot of people do. A huge amount of people do.
More than you think. I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe
More than you would. There's a reason why they have all of the tests and the surveys and the questions given to women after birth at pediatric appointments, because it is far more common than you would think. So that's the biggest takeaway, is like, if you're having mental health problems and it's affecting your children or even just yourself, get help, ask for help. There's no reason to be embarrassed of it or ashamed of it.
I think is so important what you just said. I think it's really important that you don't feel embarrassed and you're not going to get in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
For having issues. Parenting is hard. Having children is hard. It's, you know, and it can be mentally exhausting to be up all night. And
Yeah.
you know,
Develop the support.
I think even in this situation, you know, maybe not exactly yours, but even in any medical mom situation, you know, one of the things I talk about is I haven't really slept through the night in 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a significant strain on your mental capacity, including having, you know, lots of other children or anything else, like you had another young child, and that it is very important. I just want to reiterate what you said. It's very important to make sure that if you are having issues, to talk to somebody, find somebody to talk to.
Whether it's a therapist, a friend, a family member, a pastor, whoever it is that you feel comfortable talking to about what you're going through, if they're willing to listen and they're willing to help you, that's all it is. That's all it takes. Most people think, I don't want to go to therapy. You don't have to go to therapy.
Just
therapy is any sort of support group that you can think of.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that we think too. Like, we think therapy is a therapist.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think it necessarily is. Like, one of the other things is also find your outlet.
Yeah.
this was the other question I asked people, like, what do you do? And when I talk about self-care, I don't mean like, do you go get fancy dates or that's not what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
What do you do to release your mind from the constant food, medicine, therapy,
Yep.
schedule? Like, what do you do? And some of the answers on our group have been really cool. I sit
Yeah.
in the shower for an extra hour. Yes.
Yeah.
Until that hot water goes. And if you don't mind a cold shower, keep it going. Right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what those are the things I think are really important too. Like that can be therapeutic as well. I'm not saying that it
Yeah.
replaces it. If you need something more, if you need something medication wise, that's not a problem either.
Yeah.
If you're not doing any of the things, right? Like even the extra shower or even the, like, you need to find something.
Yeah.
So when we talk about self-care, I think a lot of times people think it's one thing, but it's not.
No.
Right? Self-care can be, I take a walk that's 35 more minutes. For me, one of the things I do is I give my daughter an iPad.
Yeah.
And
I turn Sesame Street on and I
never would
say,
have
here
given
you
us an
go.
iPad. My older kids like, you never would have let us watch, like you didn't let us watch
Like,
TV.
listen, you're also not medically compromised.
That's what, well, and my daughter's
I didn't have to
nonverbal.
watch you 99% of the day.
Yeah, and my daughter's nonverbal, and it's the only place she can interact.
Yeah.
It's her control. But the other thing is, like, I need her to, sometimes I just need her to be contained.
Yeah.
15 appointments in 1 week. And sometimes it's like, here's your iPad. I'm going to look at my phone. I had one woman say that she just rots in her bed. And I'm like, yes, that's okay.
Yep.
Because I know you're not doing it all the
too
time
late
because you
bed
have
rotting on
appointments.
TikTok.
And so that's what I mean by, and so I like that. I love that, that self-care can look a lot of ways. It can look at reaching out to a therapist or reaching out to a friend or or spending extra time in the shower, finding some way to.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's, everybody deserves a good cry every once in a while. It's a good release of emotions.
I think you should cry. Maybe that's probably controversial too, but
it is.
You should cry. Sometimes we'll be on their way back from an appointment and
there's a huge stigma within the entire medical community of feeling guilty about grieving the life that you thought you would have having a child. Unknowingly, whether you knew bringing this baby into the world they were going to have medical complications, whether they had them post-birth or developed them later on in life. People feel guilty about grieving what they thought their life was going to look like. And I don't think that that's a healthy thing to feel guilty about.
I agree with you because I think they think that it means something about the life they have currently.
Yeah.
It doesn't, because I actually was thinking the other day, I really like my life.
Yeah.
There's some really hard parts of my life, but I also really, Millie and I always have somewhere to be.
Yeah. You're always busy.
Like we're never just sitting around, but there's, good people have come into my life through therapies and different, and so it's not about me not liking my life, but there is a different, it's liking a different thing than I could have.
Than you anticipated. Yeah.
Right, because it also could be a ballet class.
Yeah.
Right. And there's something sad about that for me, that we're not at ballet. But I do like what we're doing. And so me being sad about not being at ballet class doesn't have anything to do with me not liking my life.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that's really an important distinction to make in your head. Like, let me be sad about ballet class one day when I see a little 4-year-old running around in her tutu. Yeah. I can just be a little sad about it. And then we can just move on. And I'm not,
exactly.
And then I'll decorate her wheelchair for Halloween and that'll be really cool.
Yeah.
And we want to have
how it feels. That's how it feels with his twin. It's like, his twin is starting to stand up and he's starting to try and walk and all this stuff. And it's like a tug of war with me of like,
tugs at your heartstrings. Being
sad that I'm not seeing Davis doing the same things, and also being incredibly happy that he is doing these things that a 10-month-old normally is supposed to be doing. And it's one of those things where like internally you feel a little bit guilty because Davis isn't doing these things, but you also feel a little bit guilty about feeling sad that Andy is doing these things. So I've kind of had to.
That was one of the things I had wanted to talk to you about, was the twin aspect of it.
Yeah. It's hard. It is really hard. But it's also both aspects of Davis and Andy are both really fulfilling in their own ways. Andy is so smart and so happy and sassy, and he's getting so big. And it's also extremely fulfilling to work as hard as I do, as hard as my mom does, to get Davis into a better position than what he was coming out of the hospital, and seeing the product of our hard work come to fruition. They're both incredibly fulfilling in separate ways.
Davis.
You have that side by side to watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's, like what you were just saying, and I'm just going to kind of piggyback off of it, but sometimes those hard fought victories can just mean something.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
You know, that you kind of look back on, like for me, I look back on my other kids and I never even thought of it. Like you're excited for 5 minutes, you know, like, oh yeah. And like if Millie ever stands by herself, or
you're gonna be like, oh,
it's gonna be like months of celebration. Like we're gonna make a cake, it's gonna be a thing, right?
Yeah.
And so there's something to that. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about, like loving that part of my life. Like I love that there's a celebration for things that maybe just kind of happened.
Yeah.
With the other kids, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so instead of kind of, and I think it's just a mind shift. You just have to be sad for a second about the ballet class, but then be like, look, I get to be so excited about this thing that would have just passed me by. That really is a miracle. I mean, it is a miracle that babies are born. It's a miracle that they eat. It's, I mean, like everything, but you get to witness a miracle in slow motion almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where like, man, I worked for months and months and months to get him to do one single thing. And when he finally does it and he starts doing it on his own without having to intervene or help or kind of like push him in that direction, it's really fulfilling.
It really is. And do you know, our whole family, so you know, I have 6 older kids and then we have this little girl. Okay, so Millie started taking little crawls a year ago. She's 4 now. And now she'll crawl across the room sometimes. And I mean, it is as if she just won the Super Bowl in this house. Like every person, we're still, after a year, we're still like,
wow, Millie.
Like we're taking videos and everybody's jumping up and down. So, you know, like there's so much good. There's so much good to be seen, even in the struggle. And so I think that's like, especially with you, that is kind of my theme for my podcast with you. There's so much good in the struggle.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what you represent to me. Anyway, thank you so much. Is there anything else? Is there anything we missed or that you want to say? Or
I don't know. I think it's just don't let yourself be a part of the statistic. Stand out from the statistic. Advocate for yourself, for your children, in whatever means possible, and don't feel bad about maybe going against what doctors and therapists and other people that are going on a standardized level of everybody should be doing this. Go against that if you feel like you need to. Don't ever consider your child to be a part of a group. They're an individual. They advance it in different ways and at different paces, and it's therapists and doctors tend to group your prognosis with others that may not be in the same kind of circle as your child,
or the same.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I am so glad I know you. I hope you know that.
I'm very, very grateful to be in this group, getting to know you and other moms, and kind of getting to a point where I feel like I actually have friends again.
Well, you do. We have a big group, and I'm definitely like one of your friends and fans. So
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
I'm so glad you're willing to share this. I know it's probably like kind of a struggle.
I've
but
been like shaking half of the time,
I
so
was kind of worried about it. I've been worried, like I've been thinking about you and praying for you today, like that this would be okay.
yeah.
I just know that your story is really important.
It's
And
hard, but it's getting easier. Here, I'll show you.
Davis, is this Davis? There he is.
Yeah.
Hi, mister. Look at him on that pacifier. We love it. Oh,
Dropped it.
He dropped
he's
it.
like, don't talk about it. Yay. Oh, so great. He's such a good boy.
He's starting to do some smiling.
Look at him go. Yeah, he's sitting up pretty good too. Look at his head.
He's still working on it, but we're gonna get there, aren't we, buddy?
He's doing good, really good. All right, I'm gonna let you go. You're so wonderful. So nice to talk to you. Nice to meet you, Mom.
Thank you. All right. Have a good night.
Okay, I need to go.